Hi everybody, welcome to Lesson 8, Week 8 for our Reading Comprehension unit. We're almost at the very end of the story now. We have 2 more chapters to go. So let's get into it. Okay, so this chapter is Chapter 8 and it's called Last Days. Chapter 8, Last Days. Near the end of July, it was warm and sunny. Sadako seemed to be getting better. I'm over halfway to 1,000 cranes, she told Masahiro. So something good is going to happen. And it did. Her appetite came back and much of the pain went away. Dr. Numata was pleased with her progress and told Sadako she could go home for a visit. That night, Sadako was so excited she couldn't sleep. To keep the magic working, she made more cranes. 621, 622. It was a wonderful time to be home with the family for Obon, the biggest holiday of the year. Obon was a special celebration for spirits of the dead who'd returned to visit those they had loved on Earth. Mrs. Sasaki and Mitsue had scrubbed and swept the house until it shone. Fresh flowers brightened the table. Sadako's golden crane and Kokeshi dolls were there too. The air was filled with the smells of delicious holiday food. Dishes of bean cakes and rice balls had been placed on the altar shelf for ghostly visitors. That night, Sadako watched her mother put a lantern outside so the spirits could find their way in the dark. She let out a happy sigh. Perhaps, just perhaps, she was home to stay. For several days, a steady stream of friends and relatives came to call on the Sasaki family. By the end of the week, Sadako was pale and tired again. She could only sit quietly and watch the others. Sadako certainly has good manners now, Mr. Sasaki said. Oba-chan's spirit must be pleased to see how ladylike her granddaughter has become. How can you say that? Mr. Sasaki cried. I would rather have our lively Sadako back. She dabbed at her eyes and hurried into the kitchen. I'm making everyone sad, Sadako thought. She wished she could suddenly turn into her old self. How happy her mother would be then. As if he knew what was in Sadako's mind, her father said gruffly, There now, don't worry. After a good night's rest, you'll feel fine. But the next day, Sadako had to return to the hospital. For the first time, she was glad to be in the quiet hospital room. Her parents sat beside the bed for a long time. Every now and then, Sadako drifted off into a strange kind of half-sleep. When I die, she said dreamily, will you put my favorite bean cakes on the altar for my spirit? Mrs. Sasaki could not speak. She took her daughter's hand and held it tightly. Hush, Mr. Sasaki said in a funny voice. That will not happen for many, many years. Don't give up now, Sadako-chan. You have to make only a few more 100 cranes. Nurse Yasunaga gave Sadako medicine that helped her rest. Before her eyes closed, Sadako reached out to touch the golden crane. I will get better, she murmured to the Kokeshi doll, and someday I'll race like the wind. From then on, Dr. Numata gave Sadako blood transfusions or shots almost every day. I know it hurts, he said, but we must keep on trying. Sadako nodded. She never complained about the shots and almost constant pain. A bigger pain was growing deep inside of her. It was the fear of dying. She had to fight it as well as the disease. The golden crane helped. It reminded Sadako that there was always hope. Mrs. Sasaki spent more and more time at the hospital. Every afternoon, Sadako listened for the familiar slap, slap of her plastic slippers in the hall. All visitors had to put on yellow slippers at the door, but Mrs. Sasaki made a special sound. Sadako's heart ached to see her mother's face, so lined with worry. The leaves on the maple tree were turning rust and gold when the family came for one last visit. Ieiji handed Sadako a big box wrapped in gold paper and tied with a red ribbon. Slowly, Sadako opened it. Inside was something her mother had always wanted for her, a silk kimono with cherry blossoms on it. Sadako felt her felt hot tears blur her eyes. "Why did you do it?" she asked, touching the soft cloth. "I'll never be able to wear it, and silk costs so much money." "Sadako-chan," her father said gently, "your mother stayed up late last night to finish sewing it. Try it on for her." With a great effort, Sadako lifted herself out of bed. Mrs. Sasaki helped her put on the kimono and tie the sash. Sadako was glad her swollen legs didn't show. Unsteadily, she limped across the floor and sat in her chair by the window. Everyone agreed she looked like a princess in the kimono. At that moment, Chizuko came in. Dr. Numata had given her permission to visit for a short time. She stared at Sadako in surprise. "You look better in that outfit than in school clothes," she said. Everyone laughed, even Sadako. "Then I'll wear it to class every day when I'm well again," she joked. Mitsue and Eiji giggled at the idea. For a little while, it was almost like the good times they used to have at home. They played word games and sang Sadako's favorite songs. Meanwhile, she sat stiffly in the chair, trying not to show the pain it caused her. But it was worth the pain. When her parents left, they almost looked cheerful. Before she went to sleep, Sadako managed to fold only one paper crane. 644. It was the last she ever made. So that was chapter 8. That was the second last chapter of the book, so we're coming very close to the end. In that chapter, we're introduced to this traditional Buddhist festival in Japan called Obon, or sometimes it's just called Bon. And it's a time of the year where people commemorate or remember their ancestors. So people in their family who've passed away, that could be recently or it could be a long time ago as well. And it's believed that during this time of the year and this season, ancestors or the spirits of their ancestors return to the world to visit their relatives. And it's a tradition that's common in other cultures around the world as well. So for example, in China, there's something called the Ghost Festival, and it has its own kind of versions in other Buddhist countries like Thailand and Vietnam. In Mexico, there's something called Dia de los Muertos, which is the Day of the Dead, which you might have seen in the movie Coco, where people also set up an altar or like an ofrenda to invite the spirits of their ancestors to come and enjoy some food. So here you can see this is what Sadako's family, they set up an altar like this. They put some bean cakes and some food, and they also have some lanterns and they tidy it up. And usually there's a picture of the relative or ancestor as well. And the thought is that the spirits of the ancestors come and enjoy the food and visit the family for a while. And the lanterns guide them there. Also, it's a time for people to visit graves of their ancestors or relatives, and they tidy it up and they usually decorate it with flowers, maybe make a prayer. And at this time of the year, it seems like, thinking about people's ancestors or relatives who have passed away, it should be a sad event, but it's actually quite a joyous occasion. So there's a lot of dancing, as you can see down here. This is a particular type of dancing that happens, or dance that happens at Obon called Obonodori. They also have large kind of gatherings or festivals. So here, this is like a big lantern tower that's set up, and on the stage here, people do performances and people kind of visit wearing what's called a yukata, which is like a kimono, but it's made of cotton because it's summertime, so it's a very hot time of the year. And then at the end is a large firework display, and then they also have bonfire displays. So here, this is in Kyoto, and you can see there's a whole lot of little bonfires joined together, and this is on the side of a mountain, and they light it up to form this character. Also here, this is like a scene we've sort of seen before at New Year's time in the story, where they lit lanterns. Actually, no, it was Peace Day, sorry, not New Year's. On Peace Day, they lit the lanterns and sent them down the River Ota, and that was sort of seen as the spirits of the dead, kind of wandering by and kind of going out to sea. And they do a very similar thing here. So the idea of lighting lanterns is to guide the spirits of the ancestors on their way, either coming to the homes of their relatives or kind of leaving as well. So it's quite an important occasion. It's one of the three main holidays in Japan after New Year's and something called Golden Week. So it's a very important occasion in the story. Okay, so here are your questions for today. Firstly, Obon is a Buddhist festival in Japan where people remember and honor the dead. Do you think this is foreshadowing something that will happen in the story? And explain your answer. So remember we talked about this idea of foreshadowing in previous lessons. It's where something is hinted at, either through symbolism or somebody saying something, or the way something is described. It kind of hints that something's going to happen in the future. Do you think so? You think this idea of this Buddhist festival of people honoring the dead, do you think this is foreshadowing something that will happen in the story? Question 2, this is a literal question, so that means it's in the text and you can find it. What are 3 traditions that Sadako's family did to honor Obon, one of the biggest Japanese holidays of the year? Number 3, by this stage of the story, Sadako is very weak and terminally ill in hospital. Why did Mrs. Sasaki make Sadako a kimono? So she mentioned before in a previous chapter that she wanted to get Sadako a kimono because she was going to growing up to, become a young woman. So why do you think she made Sadako, not Sasaki, a kimono, even though she was in hospital and she was, very ill, and she had a lot of trouble putting it on? Question 4, Mr. Sasaki said Sadako certainly has good manners now. Why did this statement upset Mrs. Sasaki? Again, so these 2 are inferential questions. They're not in the story where it's like, this upset Mrs. Sasaki because you need to kind of piece together some of the clues. So think about, what Sadako was like when she was healthy, and think about, why it seems like she's got good manners now compared to, when she was at home and she was healthy. And why do you think this statement upset Mrs. Sasaki? And lastly, question 5, do you have any traditions that you and your family observe to honor family members or friends who are no longer alive? So you can describe these. If not, what might be something special you could do to commemorate someone who has passed away? So clearly, a funeral is something that people do immediately after somebody has died. But I'm thinking more things like, in the long run. So, do you put up a photo, or do you tell stories about them, or do you do something special, or light a candle, something like that? Something that you do to, commemorate someone who's passed away. It doesn't need to be a big festival like a Obon. It could even be something quite small. Okay, everybody, thank you for listening today. Remember, as always, keep doing your Super 6 template. I've seen some great responses of people been filling it in as they go. So they're kind of revising their predictions or revising their summaries, making some really excellent connections. The next lesson will be the last chapter of the book. So we'll read through that, and then we'll probably have maybe 1 or 2 more lessons after that on this book. All right, I'll see you then. Bye-bye.